Next up is the approval of the General Appropriations Amendment, Act Number 1. Mrs. Abbey.
Thank you very much. On your packet this evening, there is a charcoal folder with some documentation in it I would like to start with. If you open up your packet, on the left side are documents that the Board of Education has already received in the last couple weeks. There is the first item is the memo, which actually has the resolution that is attached to this evening that we will ask the board to be considering. The second one is the letter dated December 5th from Dr. Dean and myself. That was a very long memo really detailing all of the budget changes that we're going to be discussing shortly. That one also had a summary of the budget changes and also a summary of the BMU as well as our best projection at this particular moment. We'll talk about that a little bit more. You also have enclosed in the very back of that the 2 pages that were recently sent to the Board of Education last week. I'll call it the employee personnel page of the BMU, and then also the variable expenditure page of the BMU. So those are all materials that the board has received already. We'll get into some of those in a second. On the right-hand side, if you would pull out that spreadsheet on top, I put together the budget from what was proposed to current in a little bit different way that you've seen, so if you'll indulge me, I'd like to go through this in detail with you and then come back to the resolution, because I think that will answer a lot of the questions and provide some detailed information to the board. So having said all that, I'll just remind you that we do adopt a board budget. The board adopts a budget in June, but that process starts back in January. So a year ago, January, this Board of Education would have started to set parameters. Administration would have been bringing you recommendations based on what we estimate the foundation allowance to be, enrollment changes, staffing, all those kinds of needs, and that budget would have been put together over the spring and then adopted as required in June of each year. So since this budget was adopted in June and we're now in the very late fall, early December, we amend that budget in order to provide the Board of Education with the most up-to-date information we have. So we're looking at what happened with enrollment, were we correct on the foundation allowance, what staffing changes have we had, how did the budget come in last year, so that we can now look at that as compared to this year, and all of those, utilities, et cetera. So as we sit down and do that detailed work and then bring that to the Board of Education with the most up-to-date information that we have at the time. So I'm going to talk about what we know today, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about what we don't know, or what I will call some uncertain issues that we will be talking about as we go forward in the next couple of months. So just let me go through this sheet from a very broad overview picture. You have, this is just the general fund on the top page, the budget that was adopted last June, the recommendation of the amendment that we're bringing today, and then the variance. So as you can see, we're bringing $101.78 million in revenues and $100.2 million in expenditures, with a surplus expended for this year of $1.5 million. Our beginning fund balance was $6.9 million. In other words, that's how we ended the 2015-16 school year. So that we are projecting now an ending fund balance of a little over $8.5 million for the 16-17 school year, or about 8.5%. So a couple of quick things to note on that is, number one, this includes the Wayne County enhancement millage that was approved in November of a little over $3 million. So below that, I provided you the revenue detail, and it might be a little bit different than you've seen it, so we'll look at it in the other format as well, but I wanted you to see the big numbers as well as the detail and the variances. So when we look at the revenue detail, you can see property taxes and tuition, rents, or participation fees, that's our local revenue, changed by just about $50,000. That's really pretty much on target. The foundation, the state categorical, and the MIPSR's UAAL, those are all state resources, and that is obviously where our significant changes are. Under the foundation allowance or state aid, that's the money we get per pupil from the state of Michigan. The change is a reduction of about $767,000. That's based on the enrollment coming in a little bit less than we had budgeted for last June. It came in about down about 95 students. We had not budgeted that high. So what you're looking at is the budget reduction as a result of that change. So as you know, that has been an issue not only in Grosse Pointe for many years, but also across the state of Michigan. And really, our enrollment trends are not significantly different than the state of Michigan. So this is not something inherent to Grosse Pointe Public Schools, but it has just been a changing demographic in the state of Michigan. Although we're hopeful. We're starting to see signs of it starting to flatten out and increase a little bit. The state categorical change of a little over $500,000, that's a result of special education reporting, our costs being a little bit lower, therefore our reimbursements being a little bit lower. Half of this is for the prior year and half of that is for the current year. The MIPSR's UAAL is a bit of an anomaly this year. We are reducing the revenue. We had budgeted a higher number, closer to $8 million, and it is not that high this year, so we are reducing the revenue to reflect what we are seeing on the state aid at this point. The federal number that you're looking at, a reduction of $67,000, is the Medicaid outreach program. That are some reimbursements we receive from the federal government for providing Medicaid services to our students. What I also want to point out here is you're seeing very little change or no change in the federal and county revenues and expenditures from the budget. As I've put into some of my documentation to you, we are currently in the process of pulling those budget line items out of our general fund. We will have a separate funded project fund as well as a separate Act 18 county special education fund. We believe that once we pull these numbers out, that will provide significant more transparency as we bring those budgets to the Board of Education for approval. You'll be able to see how's our Act 18 program running, what are our funded projects such as Title I, Title II, IDEA, et cetera. So we hope to be bringing that back to the Board of Education shortly, but at this moment we have not changed those budget numbers. And then the last item obviously is the estimate of $3.1 million for the Wayne County enhancement millage. You'll recall the way that we will receive those funds is the 2 mills will be collected at the county level, and then those funds will be distributed to each school district based on pupil enrollment. So, and that will take place this fiscal year. So that is how we end up with an increase in revenue of $628,000. On the expenditure detail, the first 2 line items you're looking at, salary and benefits. If you look, you can see that those 2 items total about $87 million of our budget, or about 87%. We're looking at very minor changes, a slight decrease between those of about $200,000. So really a pretty normal sort of budget variance for our first budget amendment. Depends on what staff we hire, where they're being hired, whether we have higher teachers, lower teachers, et cetera. And then again, on FICA, retirement, and our health care benefits, significant amount of money of $33 million, just that small variance of $150,000. The next items that you're looking at, purchase services, supplies, capital outlay, and the interest tax adjustments or other. If you think about that, those are the items that really make up the variable expense portion of the BMU that you're used to looking at. That is roughly about $13 million, or the remainder of the budget, $100 million budget. And you can see the where I've increased or decreased the budget, and the most significant item that you're looking at is the purchase services items of about $407,000. Those represent a variety of everything from our substitute costs to our consultants to what we spend in our repairs and maintenance budgets, and a variety of other items in the purchase services. As we have talked about, we know that we have we came in a little over budget in 2015-16, so this variance increase is to help us get to where we actually spent funds in 15-16. So this is getting us closer to what I believe will help us get to an on-target budget for this year. Supply budgets include not only our utilities for gas and for electric, it also includes our teaching supplies, our textbooks, and our custodial supplies and office supplies. Those are the big items. We were pretty much on target last year in all of those items with the exception of our custodial supplies. Last year was a real anomaly. We actually spent close to $200,000 more than we have in the last 5 years. So I've adjusted that budget. I didn't adjust it by $200,000. I adjusted it by $74,000 that you can see here. And then we're going to take on the target of getting that budget down this year. So to understand last year's anomaly and why that was such a large increase, but then also to work that budget down and make sure that we're spending reasonably there. And then the capital outlay and the interest and tax adjustments are just minor adjustments. So the other thing I want to say about this section, and we can look at the variable budget on the BMU, is that we've talked about the fact that we know that we spent $13 million in these line item budgets, and we need to just make sure that we have everything on the right line item as we move forward. So that will be my task, to make sure that when I bring you the next budget, that what I'm bringing you, I feel that everything is in the right line item and we have everything budgeted appropriately. So I expect to see some changes in line items as we bring that forward to you, but in total, I think we're probably pretty much on target with what we expect the total expenditures to be. And if I find out different, I will certainly make you aware. So I'm going to go through the other couple of funds that we have that we're going to ask you to approve tonight, and then come back into some other detail if you would like. The second sheet that you have here, I had mentioned in my memo that we've always called this section of the resolution the School Services Fund. It's really the special revenue funds, because it consists of two funds that we're asking you to approve. It is the School Services Fund, which you may know as our preschool, kids club, community swim, safety town, and Campa Fund, and I've listed that on that sheet for you. The second fund in there is the Food Service Fund, which of course you're familiar with. That's the fund we use to account for all of our revenue and expenditures for providing breakfast, lunch, a la carte, catering, whatever we do out of that fund. So I've broken those two things out for you to see that detail. As you can see in the School Services Fund, we are actually projecting a surplus of $124,000. That's good news. We ended last year with a little bit of a deficit, $14,000, so that gets us to a $110,000 fund balance. A big piece of this is, as we've had some discussion about the preschool program and adjustments we've made to get that closer to fund balance neutral. We do have some other funds within there that, other programs within there that have been revenue enhancement programs, but as you know, we've had some discussion about preschool, and while I don't think that we're 100% at zero, we are very close to it and feeling very confident that we will get there, if not this year, probably next year. So, and when I say we're not quite there, I think it's about, John, correct me, about $29,000 that we're over budget right now in that. So, and if you want, we can certainly talk more about that program this evening. The Food Service Fund is a new service provider this year. As you know, we've hired Chartwells. They have been working very hard to make this a profitable program for us. We've had some challenges getting started, but I think we've worked through most of them. I think they're very hardworking and really trying to stay on top of every issue, from making sure we got the right food at the right school to making sure we're getting our deposits done timely and correctly. So all of the business side of it, as well as the food preparation. So when we adopted this budget last year, we didn't even have our contract in place. So the fact that we're that close to the budget is we're feeling pretty good. We are expecting right now, we're going to call that fund balance neutral. I'm really hoping we make a couple dollars there, but as we move forward and have a better idea, right now we're making our estimates really based on September and October food service, and as you know, September is a short month, and October was our first month really getting started. So as we know more, we get all of November's numbers in, and December and January, we'll have a better feel for how we're doing there. And then that last box is just a total of those two, which is what's in your resolution this evening for asking the board to approve. The last page is our sinking fund, our capital projects fund, and our debt fund. And I just wanted to mention on the sinking fund, and I had in my memo that we ended up in the end of 15-16 actually with a negative fund balance. That's not a bad thing. It's okay by law. It's okay by accounting rules. What it means is that we did some projects this past summer, and we used some of this year's money, some of the 16-17 money. That's okay. What I've done on this budget is make a target that we end up fund balance neutral, so I've reduced the expenditures to $2.2 million, and as you could see, that would get us to a fund balance of 0. It's not, again, it's not required, but I think from us to start to make some better accounting practices so that we're spending 15, 16 funds in that year, 16, 17 in that year. What I will mention, however, just for my record, is that if we have emergencies, if we have issues that require us to go over that, I will bring that back to the Board of Education for approval. But generally, those kinds of things are things that's why we have the sinking fund. So if we have a boiler and we don't have the resources in the general fund, then it needs to be repaired, it needs to be repaired. So, so we will keep the board up to date on that. And then on the last one, the debt fund, really there's no changes. The revenue and expenditures in the debt fund, of course, are accumulated for the purpose of paying off the principal and interest on previous bond issues that we've had. So that was a lot of information, and I can stop and answer questions, or I would be happy to look at the actual resolution that you have, which is the exact same information, just the state requires us to put it in a slightly different format for approval by the Board of Education. So where I gave you what are we spending our money on, the resolution kind of tells you where are we spending the money, what departments, what areas within the budget, versus salary and benefits versus transportation, that kind of thing. So I can keep going. So you have in your packet the actual resolution, and the first 2 pages of the resolution actually provide the Board of Education with what we call deviations, but really it's changes. So you saw them in one format a second ago, same numbers, but this shows you anything that changed from the proposed budget. The general fund revenues are really exactly what I just told you, that $628,000 increase includes the Wayne County enhancement millage, and that's this document, okay. It's the one that's actually in your packet tonight and in the first memo on the left side. On the general fund expenditure side, again, we're looking at it by program. So for example, basic program and added needs, that's all of our instructional programs. So that's all of our classroom programs, our special education programs, our title programs, any of those. Pupil services are programs that support that, so it might be social workers, psychologists, professional development. Again, very minor changes in those areas. General administration is the Board of Education and the Superintendent's Office. School of Administration is the Office of the Principal and everything that goes along with running a school. So all of the office staff, principals or administrators, school supplies. Business services is kind of what you'd expect. It's the Office of Business as well as some other items like property taxes and other items that we take care of there. Operation and maintenance is where you see the biggest change. That's really a very large budget in this district. It's about $10 million when you look at it all in with salary, benefits, supplies and repairs. Again, this is part of getting the 2016-17 budget in order. This is where a lot of those variable expenses are when we looked at that number on the other page. This includes not only getting health care benefits in the right line item, custodial subs, some property casualty insurance is in here, some for repairs are in here. That's about $124,000 of that number. Again, the supplies I mentioned earlier of $79,000. This includes our phone and communication, and also includes, again, all of our utilities. So, although I will tell you that I did not change the utility budget very much at all. We did come in very good in gas last year, almost $300,000 under budget, which is very good. That was very good for last year. But I don't anticipate the same kind of savings that we saw last year. If I'm wrong and we get to change it in February or March or April or May, that'll be a good thing. But I would not recommend reducing the gas budget at this time based on looking back at the last 3 to 4 years. I left the gas bill and the electric bill basically the same. So based on prior years. So that shows you, again, a lot of line item changes, but a net of only $243,000 in expenditure changes. And then the balance